Thank you for joining us today for our webinar, How to Keep Your Utilities Data. Ms. Kathy DeGlendon, the Marketing Communications Manager at Advance, and I will be your host for this panel discussion. Because October is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we thought it would be beneficial for our customers to share how they are keeping their utilities safe in today's digital age. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. All mics are on mute and there will be a Q&A session at the end. But at any time, please type in, if you have any questions, please type them in the chat and we'll answer them for you. This webinar is being recorded and you will receive a copy this week. Before we get started, I'd like to remind everyone about our upcoming Harris Customer Training Conference, December 5th through 7th at the Gaylord Palms Resort in Orlando, Florida. And you have less than a week to take advantage of the early bird pricing discount going on now. For more information, check out the events page on the Harris's corporate site or scan the QR code now. Okay, so let's see, next slide. Now I'd like to turn the presentation over to our panelists. First, Andrew Spear is the Principal Technology Analyst for Las Virgenes Water District in California. Andrew, please share a little bit about yourself.
Sure, yes, thank you. I am the Principal Technology Analyst here at the Las Virgenes Municipal Water District. We're located in Calabasas, California, so just a little northwest of LA. I've been here at the district for just about 10 years, and I supervise a team where we handle our enterprise systems, our reporting, our servers, backups, mobile devices, and help desk. Here at Las Virgenes, we have about 22,000 accounts, and our services are potable and recycled water along with sewer services.
Okay. Next, we have Jason Wilcox, who is the Vice President of Research and Development at Advance. Jason, please tell us about your background.
Thank you, Kathy. So I am, as Kathy said, the Vice President of R&D for Advanced Utility Systems. I've been a technology leader for over 20 years now, building secure and scalable software solutions in a range of industries. At Advanced, being the VP of R&D means I'm accountable for product management, or our software engineering, software quality, and our cloud operations teams. Kind of software engineering and security are big passions of mine, so I'm super happy to be speaking with you today on those topics.
Excellent. And we have Adam Mueller, who is a Senior Systems Administrator for the City of Medford. And Adam, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so again, thank you, Kathy. My name's Adam Mueller. I'm here in Medford, Oregon. We're at the very southern, almost to the California border in Oregon, southwestern Oregon. I've been with the city for 17 years. We have a wastewater treatment plant, as well as and we actually direct billing and a utilities department for about 28,000. My focus, very similar to Andrew, is basically the entire range of supporting infrastructure. Network, storage, servers, access, and of course, security. So glad to be here.
Okay, great. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Now we'll go on to our first question. What are the emerging cyber threats and risk utilities track, and how are they proactively managing them? I believe we're going to start with Andrew.
It was me, actually.
Or Adam, sorry.
No worries. So obviously there's a lot of, we hit the news, even this webinar was kind of brought up as the latest utility to be attacked. And I'm almost saying it's not necessarily emerging, just more as a rapid evolution or advancement in a kind of an almost an arms race. And unfortunately, as utilities being targets also of nation states, right now, the big, not big, but one of the most recent announcements, of course, is utilities and, if you will, government agencies being targeted by people that are a little upset with what's happening in the Middle East right now. Before that, it was Ukraine, and before that, it was just everything that's going on. So, I mean, we're definitely targeted. Obviously, I have a kind of a small government view of it, but also with the utilities. And I know the utility systems usually contain some older systems that are built into newer networks, and therefore they're, kind of those targets, and they're juicy targets, if you will, because yes, hospitals are attacked, schools are attacked, but you shut down a wastewater plant and all of a sudden it's a problem. Or of course the bigger ones, power plants, all these other kind of things. So utilities are a huge target. And ransomware is thrown around there, but really what we see is the social engineering on how they get into the systems. Spear phishing, AI is becoming involved with deep fakes. I mean, I think everybody's heard of not quite a utility, but heard of the Las Vegas issues with, that was made with a phone call. That was brought in with a phone call. So we have these things where people are getting into these systems, and a lot of it is social and networking. Another one, obviously, and as we've seen many times, is the external vendors. You at Advanced are an external vendor of ours, and we're connected. So things that make it into our networks have a tendency of bleeding into other networks, and vice versa. So it just kind of you're a hub to a bunch of different agencies. So we see that control systems in general, with supply chain attacks, where systems or people get into I guess this is the management systems that come in, and even in the security systems, and they make their way in. It's just, we're kind of a constant target, if you will. So that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily emerging. The ways we kind of look at them, or we kind of try to proactively mitigate these, is start off with user training. A lot of it is getting the users involved, training them with emails. I think our users really hate us. We spend, quarterly, we have tests and emails. We send out spoof emails, and people get, it's kind of the game type thing. If they can either catch the spoof email or not. And our HR department really dislikes us because usually they're the fake source, because everybody wants to open up things from HR. So, we have the user training. If people aren't already, I strongly urge connecting with CISA, Cybersecurity and Information Security Agencies. They're a Homeland Security agency, along with MS ISAC, Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They're for local governments, utilities, school districts. I mean, they'll work with them. They have best practices guides. They have vulnerability scanning that they can offer to utilities. In fact, I think the most recent one I saw was free. I put that out there because I can't guarantee it, but free or low cost vulnerability scanning for systems. They put out indicators of compromise. They put out almost daily reports of systems that are, have vulnerabilities that are out there. So, definitely get involved if you're not already. Then of course there's everything else, the EDRs, the log analysis, backup systems, updates, user password management, identity controls. I mean, just everything that, everybody's supposed to be doing with zero budget and no staff. So, another reason why we're kind of a target.
Yeah.
So, and then there's also, shifting to, or using software as a service, offloading some of that load that we're bearing to like you, in which you can kind of focus on the specific system. So yeah, I guess that's kind of just a smattering of all over the place, but that's where we're looking at it.
Yeah, and then I have a lot of overlap from what Adam was saying. One of our biggest threats is we see a lot of phishing attempts daily, and we actually get reports, and we actually view a lot of these emails, and they are trying to fool our employees to getting them to give up their credentials to log into their email and start, making their way into here from that. Fortunately, we don't see much. We haven't gotten any ransomware, have seen much of it, but that's something that keeps us on our toes, and we are constantly looking for signs for that. And like Adam said, it's funny, he brought up employees, for mitigation, employees are the first line of defense. Like that was on my list too. Employees are the first line of defense. We have a lot of training. We send out phishing campaigns every month I think people are kind of tired with us about it, but the threat never goes away, and it's the constant reminder that we want to keep sending out to our staff here that you can never let your guard down. I mean, something as simple as giving up your username and password could cause everybody massive headaches. Yeah, so we worked with our HR department, and we have required yearly training now. And if those employees do click on that link we send out, they get to take the training again. We keep up to date with having the latest endpoint protection on all of our workstations and our servers. We have very strict firewall rules. And our firewall allows us to, it has a subscription to constantly, update any malicious links that have been reported. We actually have alerts set up on our network. If there's any not common changes being made, we're notified right away so we can look into it. Some of these alerts are simply just someone updating their password, and all the time, luckily, they're valid, but we have had to check in with certain employees to confirm that it was them. Let's see, we even test some of the actual real phishing emails that we get and confirm that the links are being blocked. And, luckily, most of the time they are, or they're updated within, it seems like a few hours from what we're seeing. Our CIS server has very limited access, if any, to the internet. It's on an as-needed basis. And since we control that server here on premise, we are very protective of it. And we keep various immutable backups of that server and various other servers here at the district that are critical.
Yeah, if I can just chime in, what I think we're really hearing is the theme around education, continuous monitoring, and continuous improvement. So that theme of vigilance, right? So having the policies, having the standards is one thing, but proving their effectiveness and taking steps when the effectiveness is proved to be a little bit wanting. That's the ingredients behind a truly secure organization. And if you don't, just having the policy sitting on the shelf or just doing the education once isn't going to meet the standard for you. So yeah, definitely a theme of continued vigilance and ongoing monitoring and testing.
We do have a question from the audience, and it brings up the next question that we're going to be talking about, which is, how do utilities balance the need of accessibility and convenience with robust security measures, especially in the context of remote work and customer self-service? And the question asked by Deanne was, how have you seen increases in security threats with more employees telecommuting, and how do you mitigate those threats with home networks that may be less secure? So that fits in with this question here. And I believe that we're going to start with Andrew.
Yes. So with the new era of working from home, it did change a lot of ways that we in IT kind of had to set up certain people or change certain processes, lock down more or open up certain items. So, but like I said before, employees are our first line of defense, and the training that we provide to them and making them aware, it goes a long way. It just is something that should never stop happening. We have one of the changes that we did after the people started working remotely is now we have cloud managed like endpoint protections, cloud managed patch management, and that allows us in IT to effectively make sure all of our workstations are up to date no matter really where they are. We've also utilized multi-factor for logins. There's like, I think anywhere that enables that or requires that from employees, people don't like it, but it's been very receptive here, and we sent out a lot of communications explaining, why we're doing this, so everyone, understands. We're not trying to make them, do extra work. We're, trying to protect everyone here, along with our customers. We even require the advanced utility support team to do multi-factor when they log into our network to do any kind of support work. And then for our customer service employees that are billing remotely or using CIS remotely, they are required to log into a local workstation here at the district to do all that work. And that just kind of gives us a little more control over, anything that they're doing in CIS, and to keep it secure.
And we do have a question about VPN system. Do you use a VPN system or a VDI?
We use VPN, and we require multi-factor to be able to get into that VPN.
Yeah, and I believe the VDI there is referring to virtual desktop infrastructure. So I can say we don't in our organization, because we're building software a lot of the time and we need access to a machine, but we do quite a bit of research, and in our production systems, we do use immutable architecture for our server and our cloud platform. So the advantages to using VDI is you can use immutable desktops, which means there's no ability for malware or undesirable applications to be installed. Whenever the user kind of initiates a virtual desktop, they're getting a clean desktop, ideally with all applications that have been vetted and tested before they were included in that image. So there is a lot of value in organizations where their users don't have high demands on that infrastructure to make use of virtual desktop infrastructure. So definitely worth looking into, and certainly in server-based deployments, looking at immutable architecture and containerization for protecting your infrastructure so they're not able to be attacked, or that attack surface is smaller. And in the event of any malicious activity, you have the ability to take that container offline, and ideally you have the ability to recreate it from scratch from a clean image, and remove any undesirable malware that may be there. So yeah, definitely keeping my eye on VDI as an enterprise solution to lower your attack surface and make you less vulnerable to cyber risks.
And I do see that we have a note from Zach Portwood, who says AUS is one of the most receptive companies when it comes to special remote access. Our county is very strict with security, and some outside entities are very challenging to work with, but AUS has never been pushed back on us. So thank you, Zach. That's nice to hear. And then I believe Adam is next.
Sure. And yeah, basically to repeat everything, but yes, we do use a VPN. We do require MFA for that VPN, and for those users that are accessing the AUS systems, or even most, or any of our systems, they remote access an on-prem machine. We do use virtualization in the server environment, and also VDI is somewhat deployed, different situations, exactly as was also brought up. One of the Andrew was bringing up MFA and being a problem with users. Since we're a municipality, we also run our police station, so we have not only PCI compliance requirements, but we have CJIS requirements, which is the Criminal Justice Information Systems, and both of those, I believe, in their next iterations are going to be requiring MFA at all login points, so even internal type things. So there's something to look forward to on that. I can't speak specifically on PCI. I believe that I saw it on version 3.4. I probably shouldn't even get into that. I don't know. But yeah, the MFA is going to be kind of an interesting thing. Interesting to bring up the AUS, working with AUS. When we first deployed, we actually did get some pushback, and this is not abnormal. So first deployed, we're talking 7-8 years ago. I mean, number of years ago, and it was actually the deployment team of having generic logins for the VPN, and we're actually actively changing that right now because of security and everything else. And I brought it up a while ago. I just haven't made it happen. But yeah, the AUS team has been very open to that. No pushback whatsoever. Just need to make it happen. So yep, just everything everybody said.
Okay, so we'll go on to the next question, which is what best practices and compliance standards should publicly utility organizations adhere to safeguard critical infrastructure cyber threats? I'm going to leave that to you, Jason.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to go over some of the same old ground because we've talked about some of them, but I'll go through them and I'll highlight some of the ones we haven't talked about as much. So first and foremost, I would say the adoption of a risk management programs, a risk assessment and risk management program to have a strategic view of the risks that are the risks to your organization. And then how you want to manage them. Adam talked about really, there's a number you can, look to mitigate those risks through the set of policies and procedures and technology. You can look to transfer that risk either through outsourcing or insurance or those types of things, or in some cases you'll have to accept the risk in the case of, it would be more secure, for example, not to have self-service payments, but we've agreed, going back to question one, that we still have to have convenience and accessibility. So there are some risks that you're going to accept, and then you're going to take steps to mitigate them and transfer as much of the remaining risk as possible in order to move forward. Once you've known what your risks are and you have plans of attack for them, then I would say it's the adoption of a set of policies based on a comprehensive control framework. Examples of those control frameworks are things like ISO 27001, NIST 800, SOC, COBIT, COSO, and you may be adopting one or more of those and combining them in order to put together a series of policies that your organization will adhere to and enforce in order to mitigate your risks. The next thing, once you have that policy in place, both my colleagues have hit the nail on the head, a robust and continuous education program with enforcement, with testing and enforcement. Should you find that it's not sufficient is the next one. There's no point in having policies in place or writing policies if people aren't going to adhere to them, and people aren't always adhering them or not following policy because they don't know, they just forgot. We in the security field and have those that have a passion for security, we always have it top of mind, but we need to keep in mind that not everyone is thinking that way, and people need to be over communicated to, if you will, in order to make sure that they're aware of the risks and are taking the necessary steps in order to safeguard against them. Once you have that education in place, I would say a program for regular testing and audits. Talked about that for testing, but also regular software testing, regular penetration testing, working with your vendors to make sure they deliver their SOC audit or their can provide evidence of penetration testing. Another example would be disaster recovery or business continuity testing, making sure you're doing those tests. Again, in that same theme, I would say continuous monitoring of an intrusion detection are the next area. So always having kind of automated systems in place, endpoint protection, things like CrowdStrike, looking for files that shouldn't change, timestamps or size aren't changing, other kind of odd login timings, those types of things that automated systems and increasingly artificial intelligence tooling can help you be aware of. So having, I would say this is tooling that you're needing here to do this continuous monitoring and intrusion detection. And then lastly, I would say a feedback loop. And I think it was Andrew that said this, right? It's things are always evolving, or maybe it was Adam, sorry. It's always evolving. The threat landscape and threat actors are always evolving and improving their game. And the risks that our organizations face are always changing. So always being aware of what the threat landscape is, keeping current, and then adopting, what your risks are, what the frameworks and controls you have in place in order to address those, changing your education program if you're finding it's not letting threats, or it is letting threats through. It's that ongoing continuous evolution and tweaking of your framework in order to stay current. So I think those are the practices I would highlight at most. That there are some tools in there that can help you with those, but from a framework point of view, those are the ones I would highlight.
Yeah, to jump in, absolutely, the framework's in there, and there are a number of them that were already mentioned. Like I said, I really heavily lean on the CIS and the MSAC controls that are from Homeland Security. They're excellent in getting you out the newest, they're just the constant threats that are out there that again are it's the arms race. It's constantly evolving or evolving and that kind of thing. And yeah, the log analysis, EDR solutions for not just antivirus type things, but actively looking for exploits, and not just exploits, but just odd behavior. As an example, many years ago, we actually did face a not on AUS, we'll put it that way, but on one of our systems, one of our PCI systems, where a threat actor was able to get into the DMZ server. So they were able to mitigate all of our defenses, perimeter defenses, get onto that server. Then they did basically a living off the land situation in which they turned on advanced logging. Turning on advanced logging actually took entered credit card information that was scraped off of the entry page. So, a user would, or a customer would log into the web page and then enter their credit card information, and advanced logging within that was part of the tool. It was part of the system. It wasn't anything special or anything that was added, but it was just turned on. And then they were able to exfiltrate those logs, and there are the credit card numbers and all of the information you need to use the credit card numbers that were in that logging. So really paying attention to what's happening on the systems, which is very difficult, but that's it's just little things that why did somebody turn logging on the system? The system should be hardened and not be logged. We know it was in a less secure place, being in the DMZ and everything else. So yeah, the log analysis, the isolation, which I was just talking about, which doesn't always help unless you know exactly where you're looking at, access controls, to protecting data, which is another big thing. I mean, a lot of systems allow you to store credit cards locally within the system, so we can't necessarily see them, but they are in there in a hash format. So then we're looking at encryption at rest even of systems that are there, and immutable backups. So there's lots of things you can do, and they all take time, money, and energy to actually make happen.
Yeah, and I'll kind of overlap a little bit what Jason and Adam have already said, but we use third-party consultants to do internal and external penetration testing, and we want them to find our weak points. We're not upset if they find anything, because that gives us something else to improve on. And we expect to always be finding something new to improve on. So it's very it's something that it's good for us to do, and I recommend it to anybody to get that. Don't do it yourself, get somebody else to do it, because you already know what your exploits are. Maybe you don't, but get somebody else to do it. We're also members of various security organizations. I think Adam has already brought up. I mean, we're part of CISA, we're part of MS-ISAC, Water ISAC. They've been very useful resource for us to kind of learn what the threats are, for them to help mitigate anything that's currently out there that's a current threat. We actually have a dedicated network and security team that that's one of their full-time jobs. Is they make sure that they're on top of or ahead of any possible threats. I have meetings with them monthly, but we're constantly talking. We literally almost sit next to each other. But we even, during these meetings, we even plan out exercises of what happens if our CIS server gets compromised. And we kind of go step by step on who would need to notify, what we would need to do, and kind of hope we never have to do it. But if we do ever have to do it, a plan is in place and we're not running around. And then I've heard this from Jason and Adam, but communication is key. Like whether it's communication internally with information system staff or even to our employees here and even to customers, just saying, hey, we're doing our best to stay on top of any kind of threats that are out there. And it really helps that our board of directors and our executive management team, they are 100% supportive of what we do. They are with us and wanting to stay on top of any active threats or any future threats that are out there, because they want to do their best to protect the district as well.
I think we're going to move on to our question and answer section. So this is where you as the audience get to ask our panelists some questions, type them into the chat, and we will answer them for you.
I think there was already one earlier about, have you seen any increases in security threats with more employees telecommuting? I would say at our end, probably not. I mean, with most of our security threats coming from phishing emails, I think that's roughly about the same for us.
So Adam, are you seeing a difference with telecommuting, or it's about the same for you guys?
I'd agree that it's about the same. We haven't really seen much of an increase. Of course, those with the mitigations of requiring remote access, that kind of thing. So it's the attacks through phishing emails, through everything else that's coming in on the user base. We do employ, and on top of the remote session, we do require, like I said, the MFA, but we also require minimum standards for systems that are logging in. The VPN actually checks to make sure that there is a VPN, or not just a VPN, but an antivirus, that updates are current, or certain updates are current, that OSs are current, those kind of things. So we do what we can to try to mitigate the home network. But it's kind of the same thing as just the traveling. If you have somebody stop off at a coffee shop, logging into that. So I can't really say that much has changed from working from home, other than some of the communication issues.
Yeah, I would say similarly, we haven't seen an increase. The only thing, and it's kind of related to the question because people we're talking about MFA as a solution. One of the things I've been reading about and heard some evidence of that is kind of MFA fatigue, this idea where people are getting multiple requests for MFA that they don't always know what the source is. So that's definitely something that we've included in our training programs moving forward, is this concept of reminding people of the idea of MFA and what it's for, and to be on the lookout and vigilant on MFA fatigue. So for those of you that don't know, MFA fatigue is where it's an attack where people keep sending over and over again an MFA request in the hope that the person just gets fed up with receiving them and eventually says yes. So it will, and then the person gains access. So I would highly recommend that if that's not part of your training material, that it gets included.
Yeah, it's a good point on that.
Yeah, definitely. We do have a question that says, what is the most important security measure I can place at my utility? If you had to pick just the one most important one, what would that be?
Employees, training employees to know what to look out for. That's 100% my first one.
The training with that, as well as communication, because we need, not only are they the first line, that they're the ones that are going to be targeted and or susceptible, but we can't see everything. And if somebody sees something, I really hate the cliche, but it's the, see something, say something type thing, where, even if you're admitting to, hey, I just clicked on this link and I don't know what happened, communicate with staff. So yeah, the communication and training.
And
Yeah.
I am seeing a question. Someone's asking you, do you have any user training resources or recommendations that you could make?
So we utilize, I don't want to give any, how does this, we use KnowBe4, not to, promote them. We've used them, we've appreciated them with the email and training. We run the training through them as well, so.
Same for us with exactly what Adam said.
Right, and so I'll just add in and say our content is developed internally, but I would say, and I'm not sure the source of the content could be the same organization, but I would say in addition to generic training, communicating on your internal policies and procedures, and having that as part of an annual assessment to include in your training program is definitely key as well. The general protection, very valuable. I would agree that's number one on my list of things if I had to have just one, but making sure that people know what your incident response plan is, making sure they know what their business continuity plan is, making sure they know any, remote device or endpoint protection policies that they're intended to adhere to. And again, having that as a part of an annual attestation process, backed up by maybe some testing, I think that's key as well. And communication, education, training, they are so key to an organization's defense. They can't be stressed enough, I think.
So I see that James said that he uses the same as you, Adam, and Andrew. What was the name of that product again that you were saying? Not that you're endorsing it, but like which one was the one that you said that you used? Because I didn't hear it.
It's a KnowBe4,
KnowBe4.
KNOWBE4, letter 4. Yep, there we go. MP put
Okay,
that
yeah,
up
I
there.
see it in the
And there are
sheet.
competitors, a lot of general things. They just really focused on the email, and then we brought in, that's where we get the phishing tests, we get the reports from them. They keep it updated so far anyway, as well as automated, so we can automate tests. And by what I mean by keeping updated is that they actually employ the current attacks that are out there. So they keep current on the attacks. And yes, as Zach points out, yes, Microsoft Defender, I believe they have an option. I'm not sure what licensing level you have to get to for that in Microsoft.
Okay, so our next question is, in your opinion, and we know that this is a hot topic right now, for a utility, what is safer, an on-premise server or a cloud server? And why do you think that one is better than the other?
So we run on-prem, just because that's how it was deployed and has been, and we haven't made the switch to hosted. Hosted comes with its own costs. To pick on you guys out there to bring it down a little bit, that might help. But to be honest, when you have an independent like AUS, like Advanced, you know exactly what you're running. You're talking about immutable storage, immutable systems. You know what's on your systems. You know what's supposed to be on those web servers, those public-facing servers. And I'm not saying that we don't, but we also have 50 other systems that we're maintaining. So I would have to say that I believe we're planning, I have no idea, I'm not putting any promises out there, but a hosted solution or software as a service type solution it definitely shifts some of that burden of protecting a system.
Yeah, and I'll chime in after Adam. So we're kind of in transition to moving to get our systems hosted. Some of them are, some of them aren't. There's some positives and negatives. A great positive is that, staff internally doesn't have to worry about infrastructure and supporting it. We just have to make sure people can access whatever service is being signed into. And then also for the people on the hosting side, they're the experts of the system. They're responsible for keeping it up to date, for getting penetration testing done on it. So it moves a lot of the risk to them if you're willing to accept it. You do, if you're someone IT that likes having control of the system, you do lose some of that control, but it can be a positive thing too. And then for our systems that are hosted internally, it's nice sometimes actually physically seeing that system in our server room and knowing that, if something happens, you can literally pull the power or, restore a backup locally to get things back. But we are in transition to moving to hosted, and that's kind of where we see others going too.
I'd repeat much of what my two colleagues said. I would say, as I mentioned, the kind of risk assessment, risk management process and framework in my earlier answer, I would say this is a decision that's a part of that. So Adam's right, there is a cost. There definitely is a cost to moving to a cloud-based or a hosted-based solution for one of your solutions. But there is a transfer of risk that goes with that as well. It does mean that the organization that does it moves some sort of day-to-day operations into more of a vendor management mindset. So having skills and capability to do managing your vendors, holding them accountable to their SLAs, looking for evidence of compliance, making sure that they are living up to their expectations, that there is a role in your organization that needs to come into play as you do outsource more and more operations of your solutions. But I would say we're seeing more and more agencies have made the decision that getting rid of that risk and having somebody else with subject matter expertise monitor that if they can prove that they have the compliance, that they have the expertise that's needed to do so.
Okay, thank you. And we do have a question from Abraham. He says, with the threat of phishing attacks, are there any recommendations for email security protection platforms?
So we actually run two. We have an on-prem solution that just all inbound email comes in for. I can't really give them a recommendation because I've run many of them. And then the second one that we have is also through our through our Office 365 with their level. And the reason why I can't quite give a recommendation on anything specific is because they all work and they all cause problems. It's very difficult. I mean, I was speaking to the arms race, having been basically our email administrator for the last 17 years. They get very good at getting past automated systems. It is that back cat and mouse, that back and forth, and you can block keywords, but then of course keywords are just avoided or special spellings or just all those other kind of things. And then there's the automated systems of, most of the the phishing attacks are going to go or employ a known bad list or a known security threat, but then of course they just start bouncing around to different accounts that they take over. Including one of our bigger problems is when a peer agency, say another government agency gets attacked, one of the first things that they take over is their email system and start sending out email from that trusted agency. And we've even had it ourselves. I mean, as was also brought up by both Jason and Andrew, that I believe by both, that most of the phishing, the first thing that they want to do is steal the credentials. So they take them to a fake login page, they get the credentials. There's the MFA fatigue or spoofing or getting around the SMS tokens or however they get in, and then they just start sending out emails. So I guess my recommendation is yes, get one. But I can't quite say, hey, this one's better than any others that are out there. Again, Microsoft's tools are pretty good, but we deal constantly with false positives and, why does this email end up in my junk folder, and, just everything that goes along with that. And one thing to really upset users faster than getting too much spam is if they miss an email that they wanted. So it's difficult out there. That's all I can say on it. That's why it goes back to the training. And, our users need to be able to figure out, do the tests on what it is. And actually, one of the concerns that I have is, we have this AI that has been built into a lot of the security tools. Well, we're also seeing them built or starting to be used as from the
Exactly.
attackers, because now, I mean, what are standard ones? You look at an email and look for the misspellings and look for the weird links and look for the the wrongness in the email. Well, when these emails are generated by AI, there is nothing wrong with them. I mean, it gets very difficult to spot. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Adam says. Like, no system's going to protect you 100%, and that's why employee training is so critical. But on top of what rules are in place, we have special rules that will forward a certain type of email that meets the criteria to our security staff, and they actually have to hit approve on those. We are seeing. It's interesting seeing phishing emails come through, how they're evolving over time. We actually just started seeing phishing emails that contain a QR code to get people to log into. So, and that was a new one for us, because then that takes essentially the link off of our district network and moving it to their cell phone to try to log in. And that's where multi-factor comes into place too, where someone password gets compromised, hopefully we have another line of defense with multi-factor. But from what we've seen with our employees, if someone accidentally even clicks on a link, they let us know, because they don't want to get in trouble. They don't want it. They know the risk of everything. And so, we're able to go check the logs and see, and we always just, if you're unsure, just reset your password. And
yeah, I would agree on everything that's said. Going back to the point of, if your credentials are compromised, the best email solution won't help you, right? So having trained users that can identify a phishing email, even if it's sent from a reliable source, is key.
Yeah, and I was just going to put in there, yes, we saw the QR code going through, and that's actually specifically frustrating for us. So one of the things that we did that really upset our users, but they've kind of gotten used to it, is that we filter all incoming URLs. So anything with a link in it gets rewritten and redirected, so that not only does it go through a testing process and then also a sandbox, but it gives the user one more chance. They click on that link, it pops up a page saying, do you really want to click on this? Which of course some are just going to click straight through. But yeah, that QR code fixes that problem, or it doesn't fix it, bypasses that, because that's not something that's rewritable. That's just an image. And so then you start blocking all images, and that that causes its own problems. So
And I also want to add on to what Adam was saying, and we've seen it too, where if a email account from some other agency gets compromised and they start sending out emails, and we see it, we actually two people in our security team will actually call them and call their office and just let them know, being nice, just like, hey, are you aware? It looks like your email's been compromised. And sometimes they weren't aware, and sometimes they say, yes, we know, thank you, just as for letting us know.
And we do have something from Zach. He says he uses Proofpoint protection server. Harris uses that as well. And he finds the software is fine and offers all features that you want. A hosted solution offers unique challenges. Relinquishing control of the hardware and CLI is sometimes frustrating, but a cloud-based solution also means that emails are a bit more guaranteed to be delivered. So do y'all notice that having a hosted solution or a cloud-based solution is more effective for email phishing protection?
I think a hosted solution offers more tools in general than what people used to be on, which was on-premise mail servers. So yeah, I agree with that. I don't know too much about Proofpoint protection server, so I can't really comment to the rest of that.
I know that it works because it works for us. So because Harris uses it, so I do know that it does take care of a lot of I can go in and check to make sure that I can list something if I want to, or I can just leave it, and it gives me an email once a week saying, hey, do you want to send these out? So it does work for us. And so we have one more question I think we have time for. It's if you could provide any resources that customers could check out about keeping their data safe, what would be some resources you would recommend?
Well, I'll go with the first two. One was already said by Adam, which is CISA. I can't stress that enough for my fellow Canadians. That would be the CCS, Canadian Cybersecurity Center, which is the CISA colleague in Canada. Both of those are excellent resources and would probably start there, given wherever your agency or utility happens to be hosted, or sorry, owned. Then I would start there. They both are great resources, both for learning. They also, a lot of them provide free or low cost services. Again, to Adam's disclaimer, don't hold me to free, but they do provide services and free services. They can be contacted in the events of a ransomware attack. And in the case of, I'm sure the same is true for CISA, but for the Canadian Security, I know in many cases they've notified organizations in advance of their ransomware saying, hey, you're under attack and we're here to help you. So those are great resources. And then I already listed off ISO, NIST, SOC, COBIT, COSO. Those are other organizations where I would go to. And I think it was Andrew missed, having a trusted third party, trusted consultant that you can work with, both if you don't have a set of comprehensive policies, that you can work with to put together a series of policies based on one of those frameworks that I talked about, and can help you with ongoing validation and testing and auditing of those policies and the effectiveness of the controls you put in place. I can't stress that enough. So I'll turn it over.
Yeah, all of the above. One of the CISA, again, for down in the United States, and then the Canadian counterparts, they are extremely useful. Kind of go to MPU's question there on what should you start to use the discussions, even with retention lengths, recommendations, all that kind of stuff, is these controls, or the control control frameworks from NIST or CISA. They have, basically you start out and there's multiple levels of the controls and multiple things you go through, and you verify, starts out with an inventory. So really the the recommendations on retention lengths, that can go back and forth on what kind of data, as well as how to classify data, those kind of things. They're really answered through getting an assessment. Again, with all these agencies, start with an assessment, an external third-party assessment, and they'll gladly go through a bunch of questions with you. And if you're like us, you'll come out of the other side of those questions going, wow, we have a little bit of work to do type things, but that's really where it starts. One of the other things that they do with those third party, to kind of to go off of Andrew's, or actually everybody's recommendation, is that third party gives credibility to the requests you're making. I'm not trying to pick on management, but a lot of the time management looks at IT as a cost center. Why are we spending this money and why is it so expensive? And if you don't have an actual regulation behind it, or a third party saying, hey, you need to do these things, a lot of the time, and when budget seasons come up and they're starting to look for ways to cut budgets, and it's like, well, do we really need this MFA? Do we really need, these other things? Another thing to bring up actually is insurance. Insurance providers for IT or for infrastructure type things, they are becoming, well, they honestly can't keep paying out, and that's part of it. They're going bankrupt, not going bankrupt. I'm not supporting insurance companies here, but they are really becoming strict and difficult to work with on what they will actually cover unless you meet certain frameworks and certain requirements. So that's another place to kind of start it, is, talk to your cyber insurance company and find out what they're requiring and why.
And I would say the only thing I want to add on top of what Jason Adams said, which they pretty much said it all, is just being aware of what's happening in the news, what other attacks are going on in terms of cybersecurity, and what you can learn for those. That kind of digging into those kind of helps find resources as well.
Yeah, I would agree. CVE is another one if for very tactical type vulnerability reporting. If you don't have a tool that you're automatically listening to new vulnerabilities, keeping an eye on cve.miter.org. I can put it in there. That'll give you a list of current vulnerabilities. Back when the kind of the JLog thing came up, that or if there's a 0 day from Microsoft or something, they'll be posted there. And that's a good resource tactically above the more strategic ones that we talked about. Having tooling that listens to it is even better, which is what we do. But
we're just about out of time, guys. We're going to quickly remind everybody about HCTC. The early bird pricing is ending on the 31st. And I'd also like to thank everyone for joining us today and for your insights and about utilities, data infrastructure, and your infrastructure and how to keep it safe in today's digital age. As a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of this webinar as well as cybersecurity resources, many of which the panelists have talked about today. But if you have any questions about this webinar, the resources are about HCTC, please contact your sales account manager. They'll be able to help you with whatever you have or get you in touch with one of the panelists. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. Thank you for our panelists. We appreciate all of you attending, and we thank you for all your insights. Have a great day, everybody.
Everybody.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank